It's working. Thank you so much for joining us. It is 4 p.m. on the last day of the conference.
Yeah.
I do have a question, which is, why are you here? I mean, I know why I'm here, and I know why they're here, but I am very surprised and grateful that all of you are taking the time to join us today.
We're here because you threatened us, I think, no?
Well, that was the first time we did this talk. This is the second time we're doing this talk, because the first time was so incredible, we needed to do a second version of it. So thank you all for joining us. My name is Matt Zito. I lead the product management team for AppSheet inside of Google Cloud. That is my security badge photo for reasons that pass comprehension. Clearly, I did something unpleasant to our marketing team, and this is how they're repaying me. But with me are two folks who have much better headshots, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Yeah, hello, my name is Rhys. My photo, I think the marketing team found on a website 10 years ago, because clearly I don't look like that anymore. I feel like I've catfished the audience in bringing you here. I'm working at Airbus, a big aerospace company, and I'm leading change management and user adoption for everything related to Google Workspace deployment and also the decommissioning of our legacy Microsoft tools.
So it's my turn to share what my photo was, how
exactly.
I got it.
Yeah, 100%.
So I got that 5 minutes before the deadline of the actual slide presentation. So I had to take a picture, actually the back of that. I edited it using AI. Cleaned it up, and yeah, that's my photo. So my name is Bernaldez. I am Director of Workplace Technology at Globe Telecom in the Philippines.
Awesome. So what brings us all here, and just to sort of set the stage about what we're going to talk about is, I love this slide, I love this survey, because I think it really captures the dynamic that certainly these gentlemen saw in their organizations, but we see more broadly happening in the industry, which is, this was a survey of sort of CIOs, IT decision makers, and if you look, like 78% of them said that they were already doing low-code, no-code, or they're planning to, or they're going to do it in the next year. And to me, that really sort of highlights this shift that's happening, which is, I think we all have experienced the reality that there are more apps and more business processes and more workflows than there are developers and SaaS systems to model those in, right? So something like low-code, no-code, like AppSheet, right, really opens up some exciting opportunities, and I'm glad we're here to talk about it. Rhys, maybe you could introduce us to Airbus, just in case no one is familiar with Airbus.
Yeah, I sometimes make the assumption that everyone's familiar with Airbus, but I made a mistake. I used to do a lot of talks in schools, and at one point I asked some school kids if they knew what is Airbus, and someone said, is it the guy who died on the toilet? So that's Elvis. Airbus is a different beast altogether. We're a pioneer in aerospace technologies. We have three main divisions. We make planes. That's the most famous thing, I guess, or the thing we're best known for making. It's about 70% of what we do. We have a subsidiary called Airbus Helicopters. It might surprise you to find out that they make helicopters. We have Airbus Defence and Space, who are making everything from satellites to the rockets that launch those satellites out into space, to military secure communications equipment, including military aircraft. And we're the largest aeronautics and space company in Europe, which has some challenges around some European regulations that do impact the way that we work in the cloud. But we're really benefiting from the move to the cloud, including AppSheet and the power that's given to our citizen developers. So I guess we'll come on to that. But we're a big and complex beast. You see the numbers on the screen. 180 sites around the world, nearly 150,000 employees around the world. And you can almost double that when you talk about our extended enterprise, so the suppliers and customers that have access to our infrastructure and therefore also have accounts to some of these things.
Really, it's impressive how big Airbus is. Love to hear about Globe.
So Globe Telecom, it's in the Philippines, by the way. It's one of the largest telecommunication company in the Philippines. We have about 7,000, close to 8,000 employees. We've been a Google customer for about 10, almost 11 years now, September to 2013, to be exact. we migrated from our legacy systems to Google Workspace. But a few years back, we've decided to transition ourselves from a telco company going to a techco company. That's why I was talking about telco, but you're seeing a lot of companies there around it, but mainly from fintech to ad tech to even, we have our Gogoro. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Gogoro. It's the EV cycle in Taiwan now. It's in the Philippines also. We've partnered with them. We even have our own data center company, partnering with ST Telemedia Global Data Centers and also Ayala Corporation. And yeah, we have our largest fintech in the Philippines is GCash, powering by QR code and all the rest. So that's cool.
So if we're going to shift gears a little bit, let's talk individually about each of how you implemented citizen development, and then we'll get into sort of more detailed questions. But maybe you can talk about Airbus first.
Yeah, so when we talk about let's say the AppSheet overview or the AppSheet environment and ecosystem at Airbus, we deployed AppSheet around 2 years ago, so we're still early in the journey, and we have nearly 2,000 people at Airbus who've created applications. I'll talk a little bit later, I think, about how you get to be able to create an application, but nearly 2,000 people at Airbus have created applications, and collectively between them, they've created more than 7,000 apps. Now, you'll see that the number in the middle there is saying that only 350 of those apps have been deployed. That doesn't mean that the rest aren't used or that they were not providing benefit. It just means that they didn't need to be shared with more than 25 users, which is the limit we've set at Airbus for what we call a prototype application. So if you need to share it to more than 25 users, then it has to be fully deployed, and we have 350 apps that have gone through that process. And some examples of those apps that where we're seeing a real benefit, we have our customer centers where an airline comes on site and sits in a kind of a design workshop for a few days with us to co-design what their cabin is going to look like for their new set of aircraft. And this has a lot of processes set up to it. There's a lot of requirements that have to be captured. And this used to be done across different spreadsheets and different documentations on premise. This is now done through AppSheet, through an app that was made a couple of years ago. Another example is for tracking the location of aircraft. Now, I'm not talking about aircraft that are flying in the sky. Flight radar can do that. But when we're putting aircraft together, we make the different parts of our planes in different countries. So we make the wings in Wales, God's own country, as it's also known. We make the fuselage in Germany. We make other parts in Spain, and we basically fly them all to Toulouse, where we stick them together. And that then goes onto a final assembly line, and it gets painted, etc. And at each step, that's tracked in SAP. And most people at Airbus don't have access to that data in SAP. They don't need to. But a lot of people actually could benefit from having some of the basic amount of data. So we've got an AppSheet app now that allows you to say, OK, this aircraft serial number, where is it in the production? Now, I can see the wings are arriving tomorrow. And when's the expected delivery date? Which customer is it going to? All of this kind of thing inside AppSheet. And maybe the third example is around document workflow. So when you certify an aircraft, or not just a new aircraft, but a modification to an aircraft, there are, again, lots of external requirements that have to be met, so lots of things that have to be tracked and traced and approved through workflows. And for A350 modifications, we've also got an app that's allowing the documentation workflow to be automated inside AppSheet as well.
One of the things I really like about that location tracking use case is that sometimes I talk to people where they say, oh, well, I have existing business systems, right? I have systems of record, I have a CRM, I have I'm not going to go build those things in AppSheet. And I think it's really, I really like use cases where there is already a very expensive piece of software that has the information that people need. It's just either not available to the people who need it, or it's not in a format or a UI that's easy for them to consume, right? And so being able to give people access to that is really, it's very compelling, it's very powerful. I love those use cases. Maybe we could talk a little bit about Globe now.
Yeah, our approach for AppSheet, and well, actually we started using AppSheet way back during the pandemic. When, I'm gonna just say this frankly and all, when Google decided to deprecate AppMaker. So we were using also AppMaker at that time, and we wanted to, continuously push for it. But we realized that, whatever we do, we need to make sure that the systems around it are very much foundationally built. For example, the SAP, we're using SAP also, and we wanted to integrate further using AppMaker. And then, good thing around that time also, we realized that when Google decided to transition it to AppSheet, we were able to change the way we approach things. We realized also at that time that we don't have the number of resources that we need to, like technical resources or IT that will be able to do the integration, all of these things. And then we come up with the idea of what if we just want to make what we call a citizen development program for our organization, making use of our process owners that actually knows how things work, not necessarily on the ID set, but more of the process behind that particular system. So we partnered with Google on this when we did a hackathon, launched. We only targeted 30 teams. Ended up having 60 plus teams, but they had to cut it because we don't have any more space to begin with. And these are not IT professionals. These are finance folks. These are the ones that manages our fleet for the tracking fleet that we deal with for our network, elements like the monitoring systems that we have also. So these are not technical people, but they were able to do it, one, because they don't have anything to do during the pandemic also, because everyone's at home, right? So that was a huge plus for us too. I mean, I know pandemic is negative, but it was a plus for learning. And ended up building a lot of applications after the hackathon. Currently, we have about 331 active apps, app creators with active apps. These are apps that has more than 5 monthly active users. The biggest one, I'll show you later, the app that's really like everyone at Globe. And if you ask about it to a Globe employee, they will tell you it's built by AppSheet because the AppSheet name is in front of it. So yeah, through AppSheet rather. And then it gave us about $6.7 million in terms of savings, efficiency savings for, I guess, cost avoidance and savings for, instead of buying big systems and integrating it, we allow the users to experiment on small ones by building their own using AppSheet. And then from there, we are gradually building it bigger and bigger until we decide, okay, let's build a bigger application, ground-up application for this instead of AppSheet. But yeah, it gave us a lot of an opportunity to grow through our non-technical folks.
Awesome. That's great. So if we were going to start talking about how you got started, maybe, Red, you can kick us off and talk about how did you, obviously AppMaker, that was part of it, but even before then, how did you start thinking about citizen development?
Yeah, one is that we realized that we really don't have a lot of people to work on all the processes. And as just the earlier slide said that, it's, we tend to have this niche process that we cannot just put all our efforts to build one. And then number of users are not really that big, but it's very critical to their use case. So that's the first. We realized that we have a lot of manual processes to begin with. So yeah, we asked the users if they want to start building their own application and start becoming an IT, but not necessarily be a developer and so on. And then yeah, we also wanted to, I guess for us, we wanted to influence them. I'm not sure who among you guys are, IT stakeholders talking to a bunch of finance folks, and then you start to ask them, what exactly do you want to build? You have that incident wherein I had to ask specific people, and then they're telling me, oh, I want to build this, this, and this. And then eventually, well, that's not what you said earlier at the start. And then imagine if you invest on the initial idea, and then apparently it's not going to fly because they didn't realize exactly what they want until they actually start building it. And then using their way of doing things and using their processes, and they realize, oh, this is not what I want. So that's the second one, and it's with people. And then the third one is that it's just too expensive to buy big solutions. And we want to look into, can we just start small and then see whether this is the right solution to begin with. And yeah, that's exactly how it started. We just wanted to make things simpler and see how it goes from there.
Even inside of Google, obviously we have thousands and thousands of software engineers who are highly skilled, and all the time we talk to internal teams at Google where they couldn't get staff or they couldn't get funding to build an internal tool for X, and they ended up using AppSheet to do it. So I think this is a challenge that's universal. I mean, I think everyone here, there's a lot of nodding heads, I think would probably agree with that. When you think about this process at Airbus, how did that sort of come to fruition?
Yeah, it's funny because, Red, I don't think you used the specific words, but I was on stage the other day doing a session around security, and I talked about people, processes, and tools, and you kind of, without saying it, just talked about people, processes, and tools, and for me, it's exactly the same here. We're moving from on-premise legacy tools to Workspace and AppSheet, so we had the right tools in place. We had AppScript and AppSheet to create a low-code, no-code environment. When it came to process, we could put governance in place to make sure that our data is safe, that it stayed inside the company, that it was treated in the right way. But where people comes in is that we wanted to empower our users. We didn't want to put so much process in place that stopped people from building useful things and stifle innovation. We wanted to empower them. And for me, this is exactly why we created a citizen developer network, which we call our transformers at Airbus, because it means that we were able to guide that community as opposed to just let people get on with things. So we provide guidance and support, but they're still empowered and have the freedom to build things that are useful to them.
And one of the things that comes to mind is, the product's called AppSheet, but the reality is a lot of your users, I suspect, because I talk to a lot of folks that think about it this way, they're not necessarily thinking about building apps, right? They have a workflow, they have a process, they have a need. We call them apps internally, but the reality is it's just some way that they get things done. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's a workflow, or sometimes it's just a front end to a spreadsheet of data, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we announced, I'm going to plug, is Google Forms integration, right? So you can make that front end even more straightforward, where someone submits a form and it kicks off a workflow, which just opens up another entry point for people to get access to this. So in terms of business benefits, Rhys, what have you folks at Airbus seen in terms of the value that you've gotten?
I mean, maybe three things. The first is reduced shadow IT, or at least the shadow IT is now less in the shadows. There's a bit more light on it. So we totally accept that not every piece of code, every application at Airbus needs to be made by the IT department. It's not feasible to do that, in fact. But for the stuff, particularly the stuff that's business critical, it's much better that we know it's there, we can monitor it, we can see it's being used, and we know who's responsible for it, so that if they leave, we've got a process in place, or if it breaks, we know who to contact. So this has really helped because of the admin consoles and the monitoring and reporting that you have both in Workspace and AppSheet. We also saw that people started benefiting from each other's work, right? So one team or one person creates an application because they had a need, and then another person who hadn't even thought about creating an application went, but there's this thing that I do that's really annoying actually and takes me all day, and actually I could use your app to do that. So we saw benefits there that we couldn't have even imagined. And for us, a big driver was the fact that we were trying to decommission Microsoft Office and Microsoft SharePoint. And by using both AppScript and AppSheet via our Citizen Developer Program, we were able to start replacing some of those VBA macros which were kind of locking us into the Office environment. We were able to transform other legacy processes and in general enable us to decommission some of the tools where you don't have a direct equivalent in the Google world, right? Like SharePoint, like Microsoft Access, not all of them, but in many cases people were using those tools just as a list of data with a shiny front end, and that's a perfect example where AppSheet can very quickly build a solution.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we see a lot of other customers sort of looking at, right? And one of the things we like to talk a lot about is this continuum of expertise, right? Where someone might start building with no code inside of AppSheet, and then integrate some app script to do the one, piece that maybe AppSheet doesn't do out of the box or needs to extend. And then, there's access to all the services inside of Google Cloud and GCP for pro devs who want to build on top of it.
You start, if possible, you do as much as you can with the no-code environment. If you need low-code, you do, and if you need pro-code with the APIs, etc., you add on top, but you start with the basics, and that also makes it much easier to govern and much easier to maintain.
Excellent. And what about with Globe, Red?
Yeah, aside from what you said, exactly what you said, I think on my end is really more of the stakeholders understanding how things are being built. Because normally they don't know how, they just ask for things. Oh, I want to build this. But if they can actually appreciate how IT developers go through each and every step from understanding the data, the interaction, all of these things, what they only know is that they have spreadsheets. As you mentioned earlier, it's just spreadsheets. They have tons of spreadsheets. They think they have the right data, but apparently the other team has their own data as well. Now, if you build the application, they start to understand, wait, is this the right data that I should have? Should I talk to the other person to begin with and probably share data first? And is this the right interaction to begin with, right? So after the hackathon that we did and all the campaigns that we did, a lot of folks from our non-IT technical, non-technical departments and organizations inside Globe started to realize how easy or how hard it is to build applications, and they started to look into their own processes, which actually helped us building applications faster or building systems faster and more efficient to begin with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So in terms of the security, right, like obviously the thing that, when I talk to IT decision makers, the number one concern that people have about AppSheet is how do we secure it? How do we make sure that we're not just sort of opening a Pandora's box of giving lots of people access to data that they shouldn't have? But Rhys, whoever wants to sort of talk first about the, Red, if you want to talk first about the security side of things.
So whenever we talk about security at Globe, we start at how we design solutions or we design the application or systems, not directly on the monitoring or whatever agent we want to install. It's how we build the app. So we have this checklist or design standards to begin with. It's part of the hackathon part where we train users also before they can start building applications or app sheets. We have this design standards, which everyone needs to be aware of, which they have to go through it. They need to pass these trainings. And then we have a checklist built via AppSheet also. And lo and behold, our security team also built their own AppSheet, which is part of no-code app. And security team added all their standards there, and they had to go through, and now it's going to be what we call a no-code app. So all the developers that we have in the organization, or our citizen developers, will have to go through this no-code app, give them all the standards and which steps they need to go through. If ever they want to integrate with another platform, what are the things that they have to watch out for? Access management, what would be the right way to do it? And they just have to spend time understanding how it works, and they start doing it. And then that's how we approach security for AppSheet. Aside from all the controls already that we have from GCP security controls, workplace also. We have workspace rather. We have a lot of security controls there from having what we call context-aware access, wherein you cannot just share files outside the organization, and even between people, wherein it's confidential, because AppSheet works primarily with Google Sheets, and then you can apply it with GCP Cloud SQL and all the rest.
Awesome. And at Airbus, I know we've had a number of conversations over the years around security and governance. And
We're still having them.
Well, they're good conversations, but maybe you could talk about how you folks have approached the security and the governance side of things.
Yeah, I mean, for security, when we talk about data security, I'm not that worried about that with AppSheet because the data is not really an AppSheet. You have a little bit of metadata, but most of the data is in a Google Sheet. And so whether or not you plug AppSheet on the top of that, the data is staying in Google Sheets. And at Airbus at the moment, that's the only data source that we allow. So that data, if we need to, we can double encrypt it it can't then be used in AppSheet with client-side encryption. In terms of the governance around AppSheet Access itself, so everyone at Airbus has access to AppSheet as a viewer. That means that they can use an application that they have access to, either an application that's been shared with them directly or deployed to the whole Airbus domain. They're able to use that. If they want to create an application, and this is where I come on to what we call prototype applications, they have to do two things. They have to tick two boxes. One is literally ticking a box. They have to first attend a 1 hour training awareness session, which they can book onto. We run it once a week, and in that session we just go through what are the golden rules from a security point of view, what are the do's and don'ts about how you should treat Airbus data when you're building an application, how you should, we also talk a little bit about things like the UX and the basic capabilities of AppSheet. And once they've attended that, they have to sign a Google form. This is the literal tick in a box to say, I understood what was presented to me, and I agree to follow those guidelines. And we track both of these automatically. The form tick-in, of course, it's just in a Google Sheet. It's very easy. We've got a script. For the awareness training, this is a nice tip for you, we always use the same Google Meet code, which means we have a script that runs once per hour that looks in the Meet logs and says who attended this Google Meet code, and dumps the list into a place in a spreadsheet, and then we've got we can correspond that list with who ticked the box in the Google form, and if they appear in both lists, we automatically add them to a Google group, and that Google group gives them access. So normally within an hour of doing the two things, they have access to create applications, and it's an automated process. They can then share, this is what I mentioned earlier, with up to 25 people. And if they need to share it to more, then they need to deploy the application. And to deploy the application, they have two processes. They either tell us, this is not a business critical application, this is something that makes my life easier, makes my team's life easier, but if it stops working, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to stop aircraft being pushed out of the factory, for example. And in that case, we can just deploy it for them. They can't self-deploy. We have a few admins who can do that. But if it is business critical, they've got to go through a slightly heavier process where they need to make sure that that app is registered in our software portfolio with an application owner against it, and follow the same process as any other piece of software that we deploy at Airbus, in fact. And that means that we have a view on which applications are critical and which ones are not. And all of that is tracked actually in a Looker Studio dashboard. So there was a screenshot you saw earlier. That's something that we've put together which allows us to see, for end users, they can see a high level overview of the number of apps, and they can also see where their app sits in the leaderboard in terms of active users. So we create a little bit of competition between the application owners there. And of course, the admin view gives even more details behind that as well.
Yeah, certainly the desire for better analytics and tracking how application use is growing is a common one that we heard from customers. So we were really happy that we were able to announce a new admin UI. Still don't have a leaderboard yet, but you do.
We can sell you that idea.
But I was going to say, if you give us the Looker Studio, we'll make it available. We'll make it a template.
We'll make a deal when we go off stage.
We also have our own Looker Studio, by the way. Same.
Okay, so we'll start a joint venture and we'll sell you the concept.
I didn't realize we were starting a business in this exact moment. So hang on. So I'm just jumping around between the slides, just looking at the time because we have a lot of. Yeah. We're actually doing really well on time. So where do you go from here, right? So obviously, Airbus, 150,000-ish people. Do you see the use of AppSheet growing? Like, what does it need to do to continue to scale? Like, where do you folks both go from here, basically?
I mean, for us, we have some new features that we'll be deploying very shortly. So I think by the time this recording is published online, I think we'll have just deployed AppSheet databases at Airbus. So it's been available for a while, but we had some governance. There we go. Look, we have I guess that's the AppSheet databases team applauding.
That's the product manager for AppSheet database, who is very happy to hear that.
So that's something very new. It's something our users have been asking for, even from when it was a labs thing called Tables before it was integrated into AppSheet, in fact, so they're really looking forward to that. Chat apps are on the way at Airbus, and of course the Gemini functionality in AppSheet as well. So none of those things are deployed yet. We're testing them in our validation environment, so we can tick all the security boxes and the data governance boxes before we deploy them. And the other thing I think that we need to do is better use our citizen developers. So we get the feeling that many of our transformers, our citizen developers, they've probably got more to offer. They're probably interested in going an extra step. And so we'd like to actually increase the number of dedicated events that they support. So maybe doing more hackathons, because we also have been doing hackathons, both virtually and physically. By doing, we now start to speak to individual functions. For example, we were recently discussing with our finance department, well, now maybe we should start moving you guys off Excel. Finance start moving off Excel. And one of the things that's blocking them is a whole load of VBA macros. So maybe we can start looking at what those macros are doing and specifically look at department by department and bring those citizen developers into those events. And we also have an idea to start creating a kind of a backlog, because at the moment we let them identify their own needs and work on things, but a lot of them are not active. They could be active. They've got the skills and the know-how. They've been trained, and they're willing to help, but they don't know where to start. And so we have the idea to try to create a kind of a backlog where people across the business can say, look, this isn't urgent, but I've got this idea, I've got this need of something that could be automated, or this thing that I could really do with being transformed. I don't have the know-how in my team. And then one of our citizen developers can kind of subscribe to say, yeah, I'll get involved in that and work on it on the side and deliver some value there. So for us, I think they're the main things we're looking at.
Even within Google, we have a group we call the AppSheet champions, right? Which are a lot of people who work on AppSheet, but also just internal Googlers who are passionate about AppSheet. You have the same thing, right?
Yeah, we have coaches, AppSheet coaches.
And so the idea is that anyone who is trying to get started very similarly, there's a place that they can reach out, they can get some support, someone can, sort of be there to assist them, because like anything else, there is a learning curve, right, to get started for it. But at Globe, like, where do you see AppSheet going next?
Yeah, before I talk about the future, I need to share about what AppSheet has done for Globe to begin with, right? So I think I owe you guys what I said earlier, that share to you what the best application we have in Globe for AppSheet. And as you know, we're a telco company, we're selling phones, and we have a lot of extra phones basically in the organization. We don't sell the whole thing because, for example, it's just an old model already. It's not really that popular amongst folks. So what do we do with those? So somebody from our, they're not really technical, they're like the inventory team, asset inventory team. They built what we call a Baratillo app. So it sells phones to our employees. So yeah, so we have this almost zero, zero from 20,000 pesos to about, I don't know, 2,000. So phones that's being sold across the organization. And people loved it because now they can buy phones for their friends, for their families, and the rest. So what happened was people started using the app so much that it affected the performance of the application to the point that somebody actually bought, I don't know, we had to start, they put limits to it, like 5 phones at max per person. We had to do it because people are buying so much. I don't want to start business. There's venturing business.
I was going to say joint venture, revenue streams. There's all kinds of synergies
so
here.
So people started buying, and we realized that the application itself got performance issues because of that. Because whenever we say, oh, there's new stocks to be sold, people started to go at it. So because of that, we realized we need to at least advance the back-end systems, because AppSheet is basically a database-driven platform. So now we're looking into, same as you guys, moving to AppSheet databases and even Cloud SQL. So we will be investing more on that, having some sort of a centralized Cloud SQL for everyone to use. Say, for example, one source of truth for a specific SAP, I don't know, inventory or material code or whatever, which everyone can share, which they don't need to, have their own database for that. The second one would be, having chat apps, Gemini integration across, because we really want to expand the capabilities. Maybe we can build Gemini for phones, I guess, additional. Yeah, you can now buy more and with this type of phone, you can go there. So, and then another thing is we also have this app called G-Climate. G-Climate is basically an AI ML-driven application that predicts impact of a specific weather issues like monsoon, typhoon. In the Philippines, we're getting about 6 months of those every year. So we have typhoons every time, and we know that whenever there's a typhoon, there's going to be impact in specific areas. So this app can actually predict up to 98% accuracy, which is not bad at all. And then it uses AI ML, but a back end, and then it fetches the data from there. And then it alerts the network monitoring teams that you have to put more, say, more fuel here because the impact might be 2 days, 3 days instead of just a day or two. So yeah, we've launched that and actually won awards because of that, the G-Climate app. So yeah, so basically having additional AI ML components to all the applications that we have. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, to have more connections and scaling of the applications that we build. That's what's next.
I love that. One of the things I've always loved is, one of the things we do is new users, sometimes we survey them and it's optional, but we say like, hey, what are you trying to build? Like, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And what I love is when you look at the responses to that, it ranges from incredibly strategic and critical and important to insanely trivial, right? And those things are like, they're all important to someone, right? Like,
at Airbus, we had we've got an example of someone who manages what we call an innovation space. So we have these spaces around the world where you've got some sort of flexible working areas. You might have a workshop with some tools and stuff, some sessions which are made for creativity, and you can't book those like a normal meeting room. So normally what's happening is you're contacting the owner of that space and you're asking about the availability. And one of the guys who was managing one of those spaces tried to set something up with a Google form, but the form couldn't know what had already been booked. So in fact, all the form was doing was avoiding someone calling him, and he was still having to read the response and then check if that space was booked, and then go back to them. And he came to one of our hackathons and said, look, can we automate this? And a team that based in a completely different country. So this is what I love about our citizen developers. They're not just interested in working on their topics. They see a cool problem, they think they can solve it, and they want to work on it. So this was for a space in North Wales, and the team in Portugal said, we'll take that one. And over a 2.5-day hackathon, they built an automated solution. So now the whole space is managed, the booking system is managed inside AppSheet. So it's a really nice example, and I think the other one is, I would say it's a little bit more critical because it involves paying people, and you try not paying people, and you see that it's quite critical. We have a process at Airbus called Refer a Friend. So Red decides he wants to leave Globe Telecom and he wants to come and work for Airbus, and I recommend him to our HR team.
Are we making that happen? Is that what we're talking about? No, okay. Fair enough. Okay.
It's not a newsflash.
All right, I wasn't sure how far we were going with the new business venture thing.
Imagine Red wants to leave Globe Telecom and come to work for us at Airbus. So I tell our HR team, I recommend Red. He's a great guy. He should work for us. He joins, and he stays with us past his probation period. I then get a bonus because I've recommended him. Wow. And this process used to be handled across a whole bunch of Excel sheets, people manually putting in their calendar, okay, this person's been past their probation, so now this person has to be paid. This is now all automated in AppSheet with a single spreadsheet behind, including all of the alerts that go to the right people, automatic email telling me, the guy you recommended, they've just passed their probation, so look forward to your next paycheck. All of these messages, all the processes, fully automated using AppSheet. So it's very specific to one team, a very specific process, but for them it's increased their productivity by something that's probably not even measurable.
The other thing that I find interesting about all these examples is again, AppSheet doesn't store the data usually unless it's in an AppSheet database, right? But there's a system of record behind the scenes, and whether that system is an SAP instance or a Cloud SQL database or a sheet has zero relationship to the criticality of the app itself, right? Like we see customers all the time who have, apps with hundreds or even low thousands of users that are powered by Sheets. When you get into the tens of thousands, you really should be doing a SQL database or something like that.
Exactly.
It's a little bit bigger. But so many internal business processes are fundamentally powered by sheets already, right? So just layering AppSheet on top just expands the capability of those spreadsheets. Have you found that to be your experience there as well? Sheets runs the world, essentially?
Yeah, as I mentioned, these are not technical folks. These are spreadsheet folks, I guess. But now they can build applications.
Awesome. Well, we have just a couple minutes left. Any last thoughts in terms of what you'd love to see AppSheet do, what you wish? Actually, here's a good one. I don't know why this slide is not next in the deck. What is the single thing that you wish you knew going into deploying AppSheet, that you wish you knew before you started?
You take that one first while I have a think.
Yeah, thank you for that. No. I think it's more of the value of the people around. You know, when you actually solve the part wherein they get hooked by your idea, they tend to give more thoughts about it, and they tend to build stuff around it. And as I think we both shared it earlier, that the moment you start giving them, empower them, they themselves own the process. Yes, if you're a process owner, you actually would want to improve your process. You want to know more about it, how to improve it, not just spreadsheets, not just the data itself, but actually how it interacts among each other. And I would want to have that known before even starting the hackathon, because we could have tailored fit the hackathon through that, making sure that our process owners are very much, given the right trainings or given the right ideas on how they can actually improve their processes. Because it helped us a lot. There was during the mid of the hackathon, or not really mid, but more of the program, the citizen development program, wherein we realized that we had to really focus on these champions, I guess, the app champions, which our AppSheet coaches eventually did that by building some sort of a community page. Everyone can just post their concerns there, and the AppSheet coaches responds to them, and then actually sets meeting and provide guidance to it. But if you look at it, you've now hooked them. That people are starting to think about how applications are integrating amongst each other. And if we started with that, we could have done more, I guess, for me.
On our side, I guess we might have underestimated the people a little bit. And I say that for a couple of reasons. So first, the stakeholder management was more than we expected in terms of convincing leaders that we needed AppSheet, that it was the right tool for the job. So there was quite a lot of investment of time and effort to make that happen. But also for the citizen developers themselves, we had already put in place quite a detailed and intense bespoke AppScript training course. And I think we thought that we wouldn't need to do that for AppSheet because it seemed so intuitive. But actually, people were a bit scared. It was like, well, this is something new, and no, we do want you to walk us through it. And the mentality at Airbus is often that what's existing online isn't what they want to do because it's not tailored to Airbus use cases. So we had to put that in place, and we have now a curriculum of 9 modules on AppSheet. Each is 2 hours long, so it's plus, if you include the 1-hour training, security training, we've got 19 hours of AppSheet training that you could do. We don't expect people to do all of it. They pick and choose the modules that make sense for them. And now we've underestimated how easy it is to keep that up to date because AppSheet is ever evolving with new features, and we don't have databases in our training materials, for example. So there's a bit of effort to do there on our side to keep that up to date.
Awesome. Really, really great. So we're heading in towards the end. I want to thank you both so much for taking the time to not just come and talk to me about this, but to do it twice, because this is the second time we've had this conversation. Thanks very much, everyone here, for coming on the last day of the conference, at the end of the last day of the conference. We will be right outside the door. If folks have any questions or just want to chit-chat about AppSheet a little bit, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this. And I hope everyone has a good rest of their conference and safe travels home. Thank you very much, everybody.